Wat Tyler claimed they were zealots for truth and justice, not thieves and robbers, and he was right. Although to chant a revel, while ransacking the rich, might understandably be regarded with delight. Wat Tyler and his followers were singled out for disdain by a society poisoned by moral corrosion. Current attacks on benefit claimants and the undeserving poor have invited a similar social explosion. The Sunday Times Rich List reveals the accumulated wealth of the 1,000 richest people in the country, which, in the midst of a recession, totals £450 billion, not counting what's in tax havens, thanks to the city. All reinvested to make more money, to buy more privilege, for their children and for their children alone, to perpetuate the system, pickling social mobility in aspic, and to ensure the old divisions are set in stone. Hell is a city much like London, Shelley said, and to Cobbett it was the Great Wen, a cancerous cyst that sucked at England's lifeblood in a selfish merchant oligarch's gambling den. The city can't hide that its nest egg derives from serfdom, from indentured servitude and then from slavery. As the first capitalist power, the city spearheaded colonial expansion, for which no profitable activity was too unsavory. The city's heritage comes from interweaving money and blood, from low-minded connections of gold war and gain. And, as if following the city's mindset, the mainstream media carry news of war economies again and again. The 10 centuries-old assets of the city are never declared, but it's rumoured to own caverns of gold bars, and the land and securities on which loans were once raised yield millions in interest to empower city czars. The city's cash fund spends $10 million a year on lobbying and in making sure that the state is subservient. It ensures the well-heeled can come and go as they please, and that any financial regulations are compliant. Thus, corporation taxes are reduced, and there are tax breaks worth $500 million to city businesses, fixed up at great occasions in the Mansion House for power brokers, lavish events called banquet lobbying by city lobbyists. There's even an unelected city official who sits in Parliament with the unsettling title of the Remembrancer. He and his 7 lawyers vet legislation to ensure it's city-friendly, and, quite undemocratically, this city gopher has a seat in the chamber. But the Remembrancer forgets that the weight which he throws about on the city's behalf derives from the darker deeds of the British Empire, as well as from its worship of the golden calf. For the charter companies formed in the city financed the North American slave trade. The city seized Africa, America, and India like a robber looking for gold and for people to degrade. Why should we not form a secret society with but one object? Asked Cecil Rhodes, the Empire's tool, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole world under British rule. Africa is still lying ready for us. It is our duty to take it, Rhodes added, and beginning with the Royal African Company, every city company obliged. Ambrose Crowley, a city iron merchant, produced manacles and irons for the tethering of slaves on ships. Finance came from John Angerstein, who founded Lloyd's of London on the back of his Grenadian slave estates.
Now come here. Lloyd's is founded on 2 great pillars, news and honest dealing. If either fails, we fail, and with us the whole of the British merchant marine. You know, Lloyd's isn't merely a business of profit and loss. It's the lifeblood of British commerce. Now think of it, Minette. Just think of English ships sailing to the farthest ports of the world. Hong Kong, Cape Town, Bombay. Ships and cargo protected by our honesty. A mighty commerce built on faith.
Ever sensitive about its reputation, the city's corporation takes £10 million a year from taxpayers to mishandle. The sum's called the city offset, and it's spent on damage limitation, on trying to cover up all the city's financial scandals, such as the Lehman Brothers collapse or Bernie Madoff's pyramid scheme, a notorious $50 billion racket, or AIG's failed derivatives operation, or the Barclays LIBOR disaster. Clever PR sees the city is not held up by such adverse traffic. So the snorts of cocaine and spoons of caviar in mergers and acquisitions can go on oiling the cogs of pathological money machines, as the world's precious resources continue to be swallowed up by sweaty fingers and the city computer screens. In making sure governments only borrow from the city sentences generations to debt slavery, no differently from the Middle Ages, when serfs were cheated of their birthright by baronial knavery. Thanks to speculative house buying, driven by city greed, London becomes affordable only to the mega-rich, with the poor as an invisible service industry, or simply homeless, there to be stepped over, or left to starve in a ditch. The saying that beneath every fortune lies a great crime has to give each millionaire an antisocial stigma. Why is being one any different from being a child molester or drunk driver? They fall into the same class as Gordon Gekko or Goldfinger. And the squeezed majority pay for the super rich, as they watch the criminal wealth gap grow. And when the lion's share goes to those who don't need it, the rest are inclined to shout, "Fuck it, no." For there's now the widest division in human history between the leisurely rich and the troubled poor. But when the city is secretly stashing away trillions, there's a burning temptation to hack down the door. The City of London Corporation invests in arms, in every arms company it can find, from Lockheed Martin to Boeing to Northrop Grumman to Halliburton. Their investments increase as they decimate mankind. From BAE Systems to Raytheon to General Dynamics, the city makes a speciality of this sickly field. It cares nothing about bloodletting or body counts. The city's only concern is financial yield. And to protest it, a UK Prime Minister, Tony Blair, urged the Serious Fraud Office not to reveal £1 billion worth of kickbacks paid by BAE Systems to Saudi royals in the £48 billion Al Yamamah arms deal. While the rest of the world was uplifted by the Arab Spring, another Prime Minister and some city arms traders left for an opportunistic junket to a Middle East in turmoil, their aim being to sell killing machines to oil-rich dictators. To the arms industry, mass murder is its unspoken ingredient. It's that business's high-end profit stream. What a contrast with William Morris's vision of utopia in his book about John Ball's dream. In it, John Ball returns to address people in the present. He recalls the merry days on earth, where John Ball says, "Fellowship is heaven, and hell is where every man is for himself." In the uprising, Middlesex was aflame as well as Essex and Kent. Chiswick and Hendon, Croydon, Clapham and Mitcham, Kingston and Harrow all sent their contingents to swell the rebel army and cause England's rulers alarm. Then it spread further north and became a national revolt, as the rebels put pressure on landlord after landlord to secure individual charters that released them from slavery. If they refused, landlords knew they'd be put to the sword. The court chronicler Froissart, in a time-serving observation, wrote, "Observe how fortunately matters turned out, for had the rebels succeeded in their intentions, they would have destroyed the whole nobility of England." But in fact it made striking inroads. No poll tax for 7 centuries, and the insurgency had given the lie to feudalism. Likewise, the present city's exposure as a terrorist bankster state highlights the need to skewer its consumer capitalism. And so a new king mob, and a new righter of wrongs called Anonymous surfaces in Tyler's spirit with cybernetic stealth, able to hack into corporate bank balances, however secure, and able to redistribute the acquisition of wealth. During the Peasants' Revolt, Wat Tyler's crowd chanted, "Sceptre and crown, they shall tumble down," and as each action has an equal and opposite reaction, Karma sees that heartless greed isn't set in stone. Predictably, a prostitute city which distorts lives with money has an appetite for escorts, however trafficked. By contrast, Tyler and Ball destroyed Sir William's brothels, so the city pimp's income from sex slaves was thwarted. One historian commented on the rebels burning the brothels on their way to London Bridge to cross the Thames. When Walworth saw so fruitful a source of income destroyed, his wrath must have risen higher than the flames. In Fagin's account, in 9 Days That Shook England, the brothel burning turned Walworth into an even more implacable enemy of the Revolution. To the rebels, he was just the worst man on earth. He had feathered his nest by exploiting human weakness, and in treating women as chattels, whom he locked up in cages with beds in the squalid stews of Bankside, and he paid them for the privilege with the pox. Undeterred, the city erects a statue to this knife-wielding brothel-keeper, to keep statues of colonial merchants and their military company. Yet, were it to commemorate Tyler and Ball, two militant utopians, it might make a start in transforming its morality. Just as there is a wall of the Communards in Paris, in the Père Lachaise cemetery, room could be made on the route of Wat Tyler's march for the memory of a deceived peasantry. But as if the city's keen to hide its low intentions in plain sight, devouring dragons guard its borders, north, south, east, and west, forgetting that those in history who kill life-threatening beasts and make the powerful powerless are praised the most. Words are things, Byron wrote, and a small drop of ink, falling like dew upon a thought, produces that which makes thousands, perhaps millions, think. To Tom Paine, writing in The Rights of Man, 1791, Wat Tyler was an intrepid, disinterested man. In other words, he was incorruptible, and the Norfolk father of the U.S. Constitution declared himself a fan. Paine added that all Tyler's proposals that were made to King Richard were on a more just and more public ground than those which had been made to King John by the barons, a king who was notoriously unsound. So that, if the barons, Paine pointed out, merited a monument to be erected at Runnymede, Tyler merits one in Smithfield. Sadly, as yet, no one's felt the need. But in 1794, Robert Southey, Coleridge's writing partner, with whom Southey planned an ideal community, wrote a poem to mark the place in Smithfield where Tyler was killed for trying to widen man's opportunity. This is the place where England's injured sons rebelled against their sovereign, for they found his yoke was grievous. Pass not lightly on. This is a place that may well invite thy mind to serious musings. Monarchs here may learn, if they oppress their people, if they waste their blood, and rob from the poor labourer his hard-earned mite, that there may come a day of vengeance. Wat Tyler's firebrand speeches and John Ball's utopian dreams fueled Leveller and Digger and Chartist revolutions, which Engels, Marx's comrade in arms, noted were about overthrowing the whole English constitution. The Chartist movement was urged to remember Tyler with rousing rhymes. Many kindred spirits still survive to raise for coming glory, till not a Briton but will strive to profit by his story. Despite his head ending up on a pole on London Bridge, Wat Tyler's tongue still cuts across centuries, inspiring captive spirits who relish his forthright appeal for the opening up of all penitentiaries. Tyler sacrificed his own life to free the serfs and to give 2 fingers to Norman yokery. He can still counteract reactionary historians, stale Tories who glorify imperial tyranny. For, as Southey wrote, he was one gifted with a strong energy of mind, quick to perceive the right and prompt to act when justice needed, his zeal unconfined. Thanks to Tyler, English labourers showed their opposition by bravely raising their own people's banners, knowing that by this one act they'd then be thought traitors, but they despised a treacherous king's manners. Thanks to the peasants' revolt, a feudal absolutism was eroded by popular visionaries who fought the totalitarian power of money and undermined its sordid tyranny. A financial fundamentalism insists that money measures every single last scrap of the life force, while it threatens and shortens people's lives, and long, long ago should have been stifled at source. Clement Attlee once lamented, "Over and over again we have seen that there is in this country another power than that which has its seat at Westminster," by which he meant the city dragon, looking for things it can devour. When whatever makes money is good is a principle, then nothing whatever can be bad, even if city investments risk man's total destruction. So what, if the interest makes bankers glad? The city's chillingly named Geiger Counter-Investment Trust buys and sells uranium. Forget Chernobyl and Fukushima. When money's at stake, humanity's quite secondary. It's even alien. One corporation, whom the city's dragon protects, bankrolls those dealing in Malaysian wood, those who devastate rainforests to plant palm oil, the main ingredient of processed food. Heart disease is accelerated, and man's engaging cousin, the orangutan, is driven from its habitat. To make way for a cooking fat, ancient lands are slashed and burned, and even breathable air is under attack. The bank in question is HSBC, housed in the city among the forest of concrete towers, stuffed with money-makers in their malignant pinnacles, which, unlike green trees that soar, just lower. Inside them, the dagger that killed Wat Tyler is still wielded, but this time it's by finance's cold, dead hand. Through its stocks and its shares and its dividends and its bonds, the dagger's plunged into the world's green and pleasant land. Daily the city gambles on the price of fossil fuels. Daily it promotes their consumption. Daily the side effects from their incineration deaden the world's seas by acidification. The most successful investors are still betting on fossil fuels, insists a louche lout in a city wine bar, whose gold credit cards are backed up by seabirds in oil slick and babies breathing exhaust fumes from his car. The ancient Babylonians used to call gold the shit of hell, and the city is filled with its embodiment, the living shits who inflate the cost of living and seek a vacuous status from brand names, smart addresses, and designer glitz, who struttingly say, "I'm much too special and far too rich to play a full part in the community. I've no wish to share my wealth, thank you very much, and I've an accountant to secure my superiority." The city mindset is identical to that of Steve Wynn, casino billionaire. Guys like me are job creators, and we don't like having a bullseye painted on our backs. The contrast between 24 million going hungry per day and Wynn's annual income of 4 billion is a provocative fact, which leads you to think that capitalism is a license to kill by stealth, through financial stress causing illness and suicide, while at the same time the peace of mind of all those with wealth should be undisturbed and the rule of money preside.